Hello, and welcome to the League of Josh podcast. My name is Joshua, and I am your host. Today's episode was recorded on June 10th, 2021. I am joined today by Hannah McGrath. Hannah has been the lead singer for the bands Chatterbox and Phosphenes. She has recently embarked on her journey into the realm of social work. In today's episode, Hannah and I discuss what influenced her to get into music, her creative process, and how music has helped her to find her most authentic self. In the latter half of the conversation, we discuss her newly budding passion for social work and how she is right where she needs to be. I'm grateful to Hannah for being as open and transparent as she was. It made this a pleasure to be a part of. Listening to her recount her experience and begin her exploration of the future felt like the observing of a budding of the flower. I hope that you guys enjoy. I'm sitting here today with Hannah McGrath, and she is completing her bachelor's degree in social work, going into a practicum this coming semester. And she is a former member, or kind of still member, of the Phosphines Collective. Things are a little bit muddy with COVID. So today we're going to talk about music and maybe social work at some points, which would be interesting. And yeah, just a little bit of life in general and what music means to people that are more musically inclined than myself. So thanks a lot for coming on, Ham.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
So can you give a little bit of a rundown of who you are and how you got into music and yeah, what you do?
Okay. So yeah, I got into, I feel like I've always been into music, but started playing music, like doing shows or writing music. I think it was like the summer of 2017, maybe. Like when we met, was I in Boston? Or was that
You are.
after?
Yeah.
I was, okay. Yeah, so yeah, I remember I went to a show. I mean, I've always played music like since I was little. Like my dad would play guitar and I would like sing songs with him, and always, my family is very musical, and my mom and dad always encouraged the arts and us, being expressive in that way. And yeah, so I've kind of always had a love for it. And then I remember in grade 12, I took Talia and I, we were like, what class could we take that we could just skip and not go to? So we were like, guitar. That sounds like you could take guitar. And we were like, we'll never go. So, but we took it and we ended up loving it and going like every day, or like we never skipped it. And that was when, yeah, it was awesome. It was just like, you just got to go to class for an hour and like plonk around on the guitar. And to be honest, I failed that class so bad because I refused to do this test. Like my teacher would be like, learn these songs, and then you have to like play them for him. And I was like, I don't want to learn your song. I want to learn my own songs. So I think Talia got like 110%. She just like crushed every song, and I think I just barely passed because I like refused to do the tests. But it was awesome. Like it was a nice introduction to like getting comfortable singing, because Talia and I would just like go into this little room in the band room, and like she would play and I would sing. And yeah, I think from there we decided we wanted to do like a benefit show for the women's shelter. So we did like a Christmas show at Zach's at the time, which is now the Vic in Kamloops. We put on this show, and I got some people from SKSS in my grad class to perform, and I think we raised like $500 or something, which was pretty cool. And that was just off cover, which was nice. And then yeah, so that was like the first show I ever played, was with me, Talia, and my friend Jared Putnam. And it was so like, I remember sitting up there, and I just was like, I'd always loved singing, and like but I'd never like done it like that, just in front of a bunch of people. And I'd also never sang into a mic before. And like even practicing, I didn't sing into a mic. But like when you sing into a mic, there's a slight delay in your PA that you hear back. So I remember I started singing, and like then I heard my playback, and I was like, oh my God. So I just like blindly went through this whole set. And it was like, I remember like we sang Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas was our Christmas song, and there's like a pretty high note in it, and I think I like botched it pretty bad, and like, but it was definitely like, it didn't discourage me though. I kept playing music, but that was the first time, and it was very special, and people were so supportive. And I remember the feeling of doing it. I was like, oh, like this is what I'm meant to do. Like I felt like I never had a thing. Like I didn't play sports. I didn't like, in high school, I kind of like felt like I just didn't have that thing. Like everyone kind of did something and was like part of some kind of group. And I just never really felt like I had that. And then playing that show, I was like, oh, like, yeah, like I love singing and writing. And, I felt more placed at that point. So from then on, I just started jamming with my brother a lot more. And Roman and I think, played some shows together, which were like, and Roman's style is very like, I mean, you've heard Roman's music. It's, he's like, we're different, but like we would come together and we create some pretty cool stuff, which was fun to like learn to compromise with his taste, and vice versa. But so that was sort of like, that grew. And then I remember one time I went to a show, I think it was called Padlock, was the venue at the time, like near the BMO Bank. And this band called Chatterbox was playing, and a friend of mine, Eric, was the drummer, and I just like, they were playing, and I was like, this is so sick. Like I feel like they could really use female vocals. Like that would sound so cool. Like they kind of had like a psych rock Tame Impala kind of energy about that. And I was like, so I just like went up to Eric after, and I was like, can I jam with you guys? Like, have you ever thought about female vocals? Like I feel like I love singing, and like I want to start writing as opposed to just doing covers. So he was like, sure. went to a jam session with them. And yeah, I mean, that was the first time that I was like, oh shit, like actually like jamming with a group, like a full band.
Mhm.
And it was so fun, like jamming. I remember that summer, it was the summer that the fires were really, really bad. And, but like, I just remember like we jammed so much, like once a week or twice a week, we'd go to this jam space in West Side. And it was just such a like a maturing moment, and also becoming who I felt like I was supposed to always be, and like being in an element that was so genuinely who I was. Like I wasn't pretending, I wasn't trying to fit into an aesthetic. Like it was just like I love singing and writing music and just like, you know, being in that moment, and it makes me feel very present. Like I never felt more present than when I would be jamming or singing. And yeah, so played with them for the summer, which was really cool. We got to play a festival, which was super cool. We went to Electric Love and I got to go for free, which was cool. And like, it was just like so many new experiences came out of it. And then, yeah, after that, I think eventually like at the end of the summer, like we kind of like dissipated a bit. And then me and two of the guys, Alex Campbell and Alex Ward, like incredibly talented people. Like Alex Campbell plays guitar, Alex Ward plays like every instrument. We kind of like split off, and then that's when we started doing Phosphines. Like really starting to do Phosphines was with the two of them, and that's when we wrote like a bunch of songs together. And we wrote that one Lazy Daisy that like is actually like there's a few actually on Bandcamp. And yeah, they were just so incredible. Like the three of us worked so well together, and we would go and jam in Alex's basement, and just like, yeah, it was just so incredible to sing and be able to sing songs that I had written. And a lot of them were just like so personal, literally just singing my diary almost. But it was very freeing and empowering to just like be doing something that people could judge me so harshly for, but I just like didn't care, and I just like felt good about it. And yeah, and then from then on we like played a few shows together, and then playing at the Blue Grotto, like those were big shows. Like that was super fun. And like I remember there was one show we played at the Blue Grotto that like people were just like actually dancing. And yeah, it's crazy being on stage and singing and just like being like everything could go wrong. I could fuck up so bad, but like I'm just gonna like I had no choice. It was like once you book a show, once you're standing on stage, all my anxieties about what could go wrong like didn't matter, and I just had to like do it.
Mhm.
Sorry, that was such a long, but that's how it kind of got to like playing in Phosphines.
What's your creative process like for writing? It sounds like you had found a voice in singing when you did your first show, and then you deciding to write gave you, it sounds like, even more of a voice.
So I remember writing when I graduated. Tilly and I moved to Montreal for like a short stint of time, and I spent a lot of time sitting in like Jean Mau's Park, and I would just write in a journal, because I knew when I went back, I was like so driven when I went back to start playing music more. And I just would write like kind of stream of consciousness a little bit. Like I really tried not to think about it too much, because like I pulled a lot of inspiration from bands like Beach House, because at the time I was really into Beach House, and like lyrically Beach House is just poetry. Like everything that woman sings is so incredible. Like especially the album Bloom, like that was a huge inspiration in the way that it's not too like, I like when music and lyrics are interpretive and it's not too blatant, because I think it just provides such a story, and it's interesting listening to music, and like you can just like really listen to what someone's singing. And yeah, and then it's special to you in whatever way you interpret it. And I really wanted to create music like that too. So I would just write like, you know, I would try and make it rhyme, or I would like not too overly make it rhyme, but I still wanted it to be rhythmic and have like some kind of connection. And yeah, I would write a lot about like, I mean, at the time I was 17, 18. So I wrote a lot about like boys and like heartache and whatever. Like I'd ever experienced anything like that at the time. But just, yeah, like honestly, stream of consciousness, and just like very personal, but in a way that was convoluted enough and not so obvious that it wasn't just like, you know, like there is some really personal songwriters where they're just super vulnerable and raw, but like I did that, but I still tried to make it kind of like poetic, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's how I would write. And then honestly, as we started jamming more, I'd have like a rough, like in a journal, I'd have like a rough outline of a song I'd written. And then I would just, when we were jamming, like, you know, like Alex Campbell, he'd start just playing some melody on his guitar, and like he was so good at just like making them up on the spot. Same with Alex Ward, he would just start playing the keys, and like I would just make up a melody, And then sometimes like the lyrics would fit into the melody, but sometimes they wouldn't, and I would just have to like make up lyrics as I was singing. Because I used to do that all when I was little. Like my family used to tease me all the time. I would just like wander around the house like singing gibberish songs with like lyrics that didn't make any sense. But like, so I kind of would do that when we were jamming, and songs would honestly just form themselves by doing that. And it was just like, I would always record the jams on my phone, so I have like hundreds of recordings of jams on my phone, and that's how we would build the songs, was just like jamming them, fitting lyrics in, changing parts of it, and like eventually a song would just form. Like Lazy Daisy, I think, was the best example of that. Like it evolved into like this beautiful sort of like wall of sound song with like super high vocals and like really dreamy, like hypnotic, and it was amazing to just see it come together. Yeah, very non-structured, I would say, was it's the creative process there.
And so is that another way that you found your sound, was just by going through trial and error and what felt right? Because you have it's a very hauntingly dreamy sound, and not haunting in the scary sense, but it's as if you're walking through an old house with nobody in it and you just get to explore. That's kind of what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing way to put it. I like that imagery. Yeah, I think I really like to I like the sense of wandering with vocals. Like I think I can sing in a pretty high register, and like when you're singing at that high of a register, it's really easy to like wander. And I mean, for me it is. And I don't know. I think I just like that. And like I said, Beach House is a huge inspiration lyrically and melodically for me. I don't know why it just naturally goes there. I mean, like also when you're playing music with other musicians, like obviously the Alexes had their creative input, and I mean honestly, like they would write the songs sonically, like instrumentally, that was all them. And I would like put, I didn't know any of the terms, so I'd be like, oh, like, and like, can we do this here? And I would try and describe it. And like they know so much about writing and playing music that I kind of always felt like on the outside a little bit, because I couldn't do much in that way, but like it worked because like they would push me to like try different things. And so it was nice to have people who weren't afraid to be like, let's try this, or let's do this. And like, I think it kind of just came together as this sort of like haunty, but it was like sweet and sort of synthetic hauntiness. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but yeah, I like the way you put it. It's not like scary haunty, but it's sort of like, I always think of it like a siren,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
in folklore, like that sort of like would lure you in with their haunty vocals.
Yeah, I definitely picture it like a nice dark forest with cool, yeah, it's very cool vocals. It draws you in. It makes you explore a little bit. I think it's a lot of fun.
Cool. That's awesome. That means a lot.
How do you move? So how does it go from that creative process into something more solidified that you would play in a concert? And how does that feel, going up and putting yourself out there in a very personal sense? As you said, it's your writing experience, your process in writing. You're you're singing your diary. So you're really putting yourself out there and hoping that people will accept you. So how does that feel going into that? And so what's the process of moving from the creative process into a more solidified process, and then bringing that to people?
I would say like just booking the show. It was like once you book the show, it's like you're kind of in it. Like it's shitty to like book a show and then back out, because like once a flyer is made, like you're in it. And like I always knew, like we'd always say this, me and the Alexes would be like, if we just book a show, then we'd have to do it, because it was hard. Like jamming is fun and it's low stakes, but it was like we wanted to show it. Like I wanted to do the shows because it's super empowering and like the most freeing feeling. And also feedback from people was always so positive, and people were always so proud. And like it was the moments where I felt the most like real and who I was doing shows. And I really wanted to do more, but I was always fucking super anxious and nervous doing them. It's like it never got easier. But yeah, I think once you book the shows, we'd be like, okay, now we need to actually practice the songs in a set list so we know how they flow into one another, so it's like a smooth transition. And yeah, like I said, the songs would kind of form themselves. You'd get these really rough structures, and then we would just keep playing the same thing over and over again. And I would record them, and then parts that we liked, we'd be like, oh, let's make sure we do that again. And it's hard to explain. They would just happen after you play the same things over and over again. And eventually we would start to just repeat the same sort of thing, and then the songs would just write themselves. And then yeah, the shows, like I remember we did a show at Zach's that was like one of the first like shows that like Ronan and I put a lot of energy into. And at the time, Factotum And JP, like after we're like, let's do this show and like really put energy into making it cool. So I got a bunch of artwork from what at the time was the Office of Surrealist Investigations, which was like this little art studio show place down on First Avenue. And I got all this artwork on these big rollouts of sheets, and we like covered the windows so people couldn't see in, because like Zach's was like a fishbowl. So if you were playing music, like people on the street would just like look in the window at you, and you like so we covered the windows with all this art, and we rented lights, and like Ronan and I like really put a lot of effort in, and Ronan DJ'd in between sets and while people were coming in, and like we really wanted to make it like something new in Kamloops, because like live music scene kind of repeated in the same way as in Kamloops. So yeah, and it went so well. It was so awesome. Like the set went really well, and like just so many. I remember just like seeing so many of my friends and family just like standing right in front of me, and they were just like, just the looks in their faces, and seeing them just like so proud and just like genuine love. I felt like to see me doing something that I felt was so exactly where I was supposed to be. Like it was so special, and honestly, I just straight black out when I'm performing. It's funny, like after I'll be like, I don't even really remember parts of it, like because like you can't be in your head, and that's why I like doing it, was because I feel like I'm constantly in my fucking head. Like I'm always overthinking, I'm always anxious, I'm always feeling like I need to control every situation, and like doing shows, like I couldn't. You just have to like, I had to go up there, and it's a moving period of time, right? So you just have to like go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would just get up there, hope I didn't forget the lyrics, and if I did forget the lyrics, I would just like make something up. You know, just got to keep it going, and like it always went super well. And I remember that show, something started happening with the mic. Like I remember I thought it was Eric who was playing drums at the time, like just like randomly slamming the drum, like the side of the drum, and I was like, okay, cool, Eric, like doing a little impromptu, like, but it turned out that the mic was doing this like weird feedback, and like, but it just worked. Like we just like worked it into the set, and yeah, it just like, it was like doing shows was like the most present I ever am in a moment. I feel like remembering is because I can't be anywhere else. I'm like up on stage singing songs that are like super vulnerable. Like some of the lyrics are like, you can definitely pick up on what I say, and you're like, oh. Like I think in one song I like sang about like kissing a girl or something, and I remember someone came up to me after and they're like, oh, I heard that line, and I was like, I'm glad, like that's why it's there. Like I want people to like pick up, you know, these like idiosyncrasies that be like, oh, did she just say that? Or like, yeah. So yeah, the shows are very, very healing, and I feel like afterwards, the feeling after when people are clapping and you've just like showed yourself in a very vulnerable way, and you've like created art with, and especially like the process of creating the songs with the Alexes and Eric drummed for us, and also Jared Willman drummed for us. Incredible musicians too, very talented. It's really tying to them. Like it's very special to create those songs, especially because the lyrics were so personal. To then have them help me create it into this like piece that people could enjoy and listen to, just it's so special. I feel very tied to them in that way, and I feel like I always will. Yeah, and then I think one of our songs, JP put on one of the cassettes for Factotum, which was cool. It's like I have like a physical copy of one of our songs on a cassette, which is cool. Like, yeah, it's very special. I love doing shows. I miss it a lot, but I'll get back to it one day.
Mm-hmm. How do you think it's helped with your mental health? Do you think that it's only when you're in the show, or do you think that the entire process helps? Or, and what do you think that is? Is it a sense of purpose that you get from it, or a sense of belonging?
I think it's, yeah, maybe it's a sense of, I think it's a sense of identity and feeling like, I don't know, I never want to pretend to be somebody I'm not. I never want to like feel like I'm surrounded by people who I have to do that, or people who make me feel like I'm not good enough in who I am. And the thing about playing music and the music scene in Kamloops is pretty great. Like the people, and I got to meet and work with a lot of really talented people. And yeah, I mean, it is a sense of belonging, but in a way that is so genuinely true to who I am, which is what makes it so special, because it's not like I have to try. It's almost like freeing because I've finally found it. Like I said, like growing up, I didn't feel like that. Like I never felt like I was like part of anything that at the time would have been considered special. You know, like in high school, it was like to be like a girl in high school was like, you got to play volleyball to be like a hot girl, you know, like it was like all these pressures, or you had to play basketball or something, or soccer, or like be in band, or like gymnastics. Like, it was like something in order to feel good. I remember always being like, why can't I just do it? Like, why can't I remember Talia and I tried out for the volleyball team in like maybe grade 10, and like we didn't even make the B team. Like, we were just like so bad. And like, but it was me trying to be someone I wasn't, because I felt like that's what I had to be. But like, I always knew I loved music, but it was a pretty quiet part of who I was. It still is a pretty quiet part of myself. Like, I don't shove it down people's throats. Like, it's not like I'm trying to be like, look at me, this music girl, she's this hipster who, like, it's genuinely just part of who I am, and it's an intimate part. And if people want to know about it, I love to talk about it, but like, I don't want to like be aggressively in people's faces about it, because that's not why I love it, you know? And I think that's what makes it so special, is because it's just raw and it's real, and I don't do it for attention. If I did it for attention, I would still be doing it. Like, people would come up to me and be like, you guys got to play more shows, like you got to tour. And I'd be like, maybe. And we would do these ridiculous breaks. Like, we'd play one show and like 6 months would go by and we'd like play another. Like, it was very sporadic, but it was just like, you know, we did it because of how it feels. And, you know, it wasn't about, you know, selling things or writing a full album. It was just like, just pure enjoyment. And yeah, very special.
Do you think that experience of finding identity in that allowed you to be authentic outside of music? Because as you said, now you don't play as much, but you feel as though you're like, it's not your identity as it is just being a music girl, but now it seems as though you're far more comfortable with who you are and just being yourself.
Oh, absolutely. I think, yeah, like realizing that, yeah, and like same thing with finding social work and being somebody who I'm really trying to, you know, channel the energy of being unapologetically who I am, and not in a way that is aggressive or like, you know, people can't, I don't know. I think there's like, it's good to have a balance of being like, you're open to connecting with people who are different than you and have different ideas than you, but being certain in who you are and genuinely loving that. It's not always easy. And I think I'm finding my identity in playing music and realizing that it was very authentic and real. And I think part of me has found that identity in social work as well, which is maybe why it's gone, like music has gone a bit on the back burner. But it's really special. And I think people will hide from parts of themselves because maybe it's not, like I said, not considered cool, or like what you should be doing, or the aesthetic you want to fit your life into. But I don't know, I have met so many incredible people. I've connected with so many people over music. I mean, you and I, like some of the most like special moments revolved around music and songs. And I think that that's something that, I don't know, like I would never want to fake it. I would never want to be doing something that didn't feel completely true. I couldn't. It just like wouldn't feel right. And I would just be a sad person, you know? And I get that it's hard for people to find that thing. I know lots of people who still sort of struggle to know what their place is in life, and, you know, but finding those little things that just like sometimes are really quiet parts of yourself that you just are like, this is something I love so much and will take every opportunity. Like, I'll take every opportunity I can to have my headphones in, listening to music, or finding music, sharing music with people. Like, you know, it's, I can't really remember what your question was. I feel like I went off on a tangent, but it was, yeah.
I'd asked about identity and the overflow of authenticity that you started to incorporate into your life outside of music.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, as also just maturing.
Answer.
Yeah, just maturing in general has made a big, like, it's funny, like I look back on my life 6 months ago, and my mom, who's going to be watching this, I remember like, yeah, she would always say to me when I was younger, when I would be like fighting with her about something, being like, I want to do this, or like, let me do this. She'd be like, just trust my judgment right now, Hannah. Like, you know, like in 6 months, in a year, you're going to look back on this time and you're going to think, wow, I was such a kid. What was I thinking? And it happens so rapidly right now. Like, I feel like I look back on myself 6 months ago and I'm like, holy fuck, like, why did I think that was the right decision? Or like, why did I think that mattered so much? And like, I feel like I'm maturing personally very rapidly right now, and like things change so quickly. And I think holding on to the things as identities change that make you feel like who you are is really important. And yeah, music is that undying part of me that through all the phases of life, through all the different maturing stages, like it's always there. And I think it's just, I love just being who I am. And like, I love posting thirst traps on Instagram and being celebrating, feeling confident, and like being like, I don't, because for so long it's like, you put yourself into these little boxes, or you try and fit into these little boxes, and it's like, why can't you just, enjoy who you are and celebrate it, and not let other people make you feel weird or observed, or like, I don't know. I'm really trying to like embody it so it becomes a true thing. And I think that that's a huge part of what this summer is for me, is just like practicing that. And that's why I was excited to talk to you about this, because I think making these connections and verbalizing them, I'm like thinking right now, I'm like, oh, what other ways? Like these, yeah, it's good to think about this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. It helps to talk. I find it's exploring the outside of your conscious understanding of things when you start to talk, and especially when you get into deep rants. It's as if there's a large well of knowledge underneath the consciousness, and once you start to actually discuss things, you don't think about what you're saying before you say it, and once you say it, you sometimes realize that there are things that you didn't hold consciously before. So I find that very interesting about discussion, and same with writing. You're not thinking about the thing that you're about to write or the thing that you're about to say. It's just something that cools up from
Mm-hmm.
deep inside of you.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's so special. Like, yeah, like it's stream of consciousness, right? It's like once you have the gate open, or you're talking to somebody who makes you feel comfortable to do that, like that's when the most amazing conversations happen, right? And same thing with, sort of like I said, with writing music. I tried not to have any structure. Like I would just like write, like, brain garbage essentially that was just like coming out, and it turned into like these art pieces, which is what made it so special. And like this, what you're doing, like this is such a form of art and expression for you, and conversation, and yeah, it's very special. And I think that everyone could benefit from just like putting themselves in these situations and talking about the things that they love, and making who they are. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. So now that you're incorporating social work into your identity as well, that seems like another place where you're able to be authentically yourself. So you're kind of adding another dynamic into that. And what pulled you from social work? What makes you gravitate towards that? Also, one sec, I have to let Chewy in. He's whining a lot. Sorry about that. I'll edit that out.
That's all good. um yeah, how I gravitated towards social work. Well, I grew up in a family. I mean, I remember I was that kid on the playground who was like telling people to don't say that's gay, because it was homophobic. Like in
Mm-hmm.
grade, 4, like I was that girl who was just like a little social justice warrior, because that's just the way I was raised. Like my parents have always been, like they came from like extreme Catholic upbringings in Ireland. So I think when they came to Canada, they realized like even the way that they were raised was like just not humanitarian, not embracing equality. And it just, they always promoted it so much. I was constantly around just like accepting people for who they were, not being homo. That was a big one. Like I think at the time when I was in elementary school, like that was such a thing to like say that's gay, or like call people, I don't even want to say it, like it just feels so unnatural to say it, but like, so that was something that I've always been around. And I don't know, I think just like I care a lot about people, and sometimes I feel like, it's funny, my sister and I were talking about this the other day, like that we have these like love laser beams in us that just like will shoot out randomly at people, and we don't know why. Like I'll have somebody like come into my work, and I'll be watching them. Like I was watching this man trying to like eat his sandwich on the patio the other day, and his napkin kept blowing away. And I was like emotionally responding to this person. Like I was like, I had so much love. I was just like, I just want to go out there and like hold your napkin down for you, because like he was just so cute. He was just like some random guy I didn't know. And I just was like, you have a whole life. You're a special person. And like, I hope people tell you that. Like sometimes I just feel like I respond emotionally to people in this way. And my sister was saying, yeah, she's like, kind of like, well, you absorb love from people around you, and she's like, it just shoots out of you at people, and like you have to like learn to hone it. And like, so I think like just knowing that that was something very intrinsic in who I was that I just like care about helping people feel good about who they are, and making people feel special. Because I don't know, I think it breaks my heart that there are people who never know how special they are, and there's no one around them who helps them feel that way. And if I could be any part of someone's life in that way, I want to. And I think for a long time, like social work was something that I thought I wanted to do, but like, you think social work and you think like hard work and shitty pay. which is, some of the reality, but I think the stigma around social work was what kind of turned me away from it for a long time. And then I think in like my third year of university, after kind of like fucking around for a bit, like not really knowing what to do, I just decided one day, like I was talking to my mom and I was like, I don't even care about this stuff. Like, I don't care about the money. I don't care about, you know, being in a profession that is considered, valuable. I just feel it in my body that this is what I need to do. I want to learn how to hone this person that I am as an empathetic person, as a caring, loving person, and just like give back to the world with it in a way that makes a difference. And so she was like, fuck yeah, do it. Like, go in social work. So yeah, I took the prereqs and then I applied and got in this last fall. And it's honestly been amazing. It's the best I've ever done in school. I mean, growing up thinking that I was kind of like not dumb, but just like not one of those people who like excelled in school really, like I just kind of always thought I was mediocre, but like I'm just like killing it now and, making really, really strong connections with professors and, especially like working with Indigenous professors and Secwepemc people. And it's so amazing, the opportunities that I feel like I'm already getting out of social work with stuff that matters. And especially in a time like this, in this last year, like, I mean, think about how much we saw in the ways of social issues and inequality and misogyny and racism, just like all this disgusting garbage that just like, it needs to be, I'm happy that it's being exposed, and I'm happy that I'm part of a generation that can, fight this fight and be part of a group of young people who want to see a difference. But it's taxing and it's a lot to absorb all the time. I think social work, I read a lot of depressing stuff every day, and but I'm surrounded by a lot of love and it helps me get through it. And I just feel social work the same way that playing music did. It just feels like exactly where I should be. And I think I'm seeing, which is nice because I'm like seeing the results of that in like my grades and feedback from my professors and the connections I'm making. And, it's incredibly special. And I'm yeah, that same feeling of being like, yep, this is totally where I'm supposed to be. And the work that I do and the way that I write and how much I'm learning, it's just like I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. This is what matters to me, is being part of, this healing effort for the world and for communities, especially Indigenous peoples, especially like recently, especially like, I mean, we've always known better information's always been there for people to find out, but I think now that it's surfacing about those 215 children, like it's just like these things keep coming up and I'm just like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else than in this fight, learning this stuff. So
Do you think that that's taught you anything about yourself, your dive into social work, and kind of the same way that music taught you a little bit about more how to be authentic? Do you think that social work has opened up any doors into yourself that weren't there consciously before?
yeah, absolutely. I would say that I think that was another moment that I was like, I resisted it for a while, but I was like, you can't make a career out of being an empathetic person. Like that's just, feeling. But like, yeah, I was like, fuck, you absolutely can, like that's what social work is. It's about people who care and want to see change and, want to help others who are oppressed. And I think it's made me feel like, I don't know, I just like, as I go through the program and I make more connections, I just like more and more, I'm just like, yeah, this is exactly where I should be. And one day I just like feel in my body like I embody it, like it's a body response. It's not just like milling through classes and writing papers. It's like it's an emotional response to the stuff that I'm learning. And I think my professors are picking up on that, which is really like in a way that I've never experienced in school before. Like professors telling me things that I'm like, what, I'm not even, like they'll say things that are like huge compliments that I just was like, I'm not even like, I'm not doing this on purpose. Like it's just like who I feel like I am, and it's really coming back to me in a really positive way. So yeah, I mean, definitely it's an identity thing. It's, I feel right where I should be. And that's why, like, yes, I'm going to be very sad to leave Victoria. I love it here. But like the opportunities I have for my practicum in the fall are huge. And I would be a fool to turn it down, especially working with, the First Nations Health Association. I'm going to learn so much valuable information and learning how to be an ally. And yeah, for sure.
I had a conversation yesterday with a friend, Kaz Kote, and he's a rapper, and we talked a little bit more about storytelling because he's also in the film industry. But we talked a little bit about vocation, which is, it comes from a Latin term, And the Latin term actually means to be called by something and towards something. And it's an
Mm-hmm.
inner voice, and it sounds like you found your vocation. It's a little bit more than a profession or something that you do to survive and derive sustenance. It's more of something deep down. It's intrinsic. It's a magnet outside of yourself that pulls you towards something. So that's very cool that you found that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I mean, yeah, that's so true, because in the end, it wasn't, a sustainable career or money that drove me to do it. It was like that I had to let go of, because I was like, I could have done anything else and made a lot more money, I'm sure. But in the end, I was like, even if I went into something that like, if I realized I couldn't go into something. Like, I remember I wanted to try and do like HR. So I was like, yeah, it's like humanitarian work, but like still make more money. And I just like tried to take business classes, and I was just like, this is so boring. I hate it. Like, I just couldn't. And so eventually, when I just let go of, like, I just like don't, it's weird. I just like have never been somebody who cares about like making a ton of money. Like, obviously, yeah, I want to try and live a comfortable life, but like, I think that comes in many forms. And I would rather be a happy person doing work that's fulfilling and is helping and healing, as opposed to like, I don't know, having a lot of money that like you have a nice house. I don't know. And I respect the people that's what some people's dream is to be able to like provide this life for themselves and their family. But for me, it was more about just doing something that I felt I loved and embodied. And yeah, I think that's what social work is. That could change, but I don't think it will. I hope not.
Do you mind if I ask what your practicum is and the research that you'll be doing there?
Yeah, so there's this wonderful, incredible Secwepemc woman named Duana Johnson Virgo. She was my professor, like a co-professor in my decolonization class in the winter semester. And she set up this meeting for me with two of her sisters who are also Secwepemc women. And I don't like, it was such an incredibly special meeting. I mean, these women just like let me into a part of their life and their culture that a lot of people wouldn't get that opportunity. And it was like an out of body experience. I remember I got off the Zoom call and I like went outside and like stumbled around in the dirt. Like, I was just like, what just happened? Like, these two women just like told me so much and shared so much like sacred knowledge with me. And I was just like, why me? Like, why did I get that? And, and then the feedback from Duana after about how she said that it went, she just was like, they've never shared stuff like that with anybody who's outside of this family. And like, that means something. And that's sort of when she offered me to do this independent practicum with her at the First Nations Health Association. Because she just, I guess she just wanted me to learn from her and work with her. And it's a huge honor. Like, it's like to have that connection building experience with those women was so special. And yeah, I just like I said, the way my body responded after that meeting, that sort of just like I just went outside and like laid in the dirt in the sun, and I was just like just thinking about the history of colonization, and like the fact that I get to be here in Victoria, and like I can still sit and learn. I mean, this is a different territory, it's the Kwangin people, but I could sit and speak to these women, and they would be so open with me and sharing with me, and like, who am I, right? Like, I'm just another student, who could be seen as just trying to be a do-gooder, but like, no, it was more than that. It's more than school. It's more than just taking courses to me. I feel like it's building connections. It's relational, and I think that's why my practicum is going to be really amazing, and I'm excited for it because I feel like I'm just going to keep building on that with Duana. So yeah, it'll be with the First Nations Health Association.
Very cool.
And and she's the head of the mental health and wellness of, I think, like 56 different bands across the province. So she's a high roller. So it'll be really cool. Lots of work. She said it's gonna be very high paced, but I'm excited.
Do you have an idea as to why you? It was a question you asked a few times, or a statement that you said, why me? I don't understand why me, but I think that there is something about you that would.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like that feeling of being like, yeah, I mean, I still sometimes am like, why me? People will say things to me and I'm like, I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary, like I just try and be very authentic, and I try and be very real. I try not to like be what I think professors want me to be. And like sometimes I struggled with that. growing up. Like, I mean, I had professors, like teachers making me feel like I was dumb, like, because I wasn't reading at the same level, or I wasn't doing math, like school. And like, it's so toxic. It can be so damaging to people's ideas of intelligence and how they value themselves. And I was lucky enough that like my parents, especially my mom, like stood hard by me and were like, I'm not going to let people make you feel stupid, because you're not. Like, you just learn differently, and the things that you care about, they're not going to teach you in elementary and high school. Like, and it was like once I got to this place in social work, and I was like, oh, I am a smart person. I have this, I can do this because this is what I actually feel. And, you know, like, I think it's still, it's as I'm going through it, like, it's still, sometimes I'll be like, holy, like I said, like having that meeting with these two women, and then Suanna sort of telling me how intense it was and how special it was. Part of me is just like, what, like, it's a lot of accountability, you know, to be like, someone to say this to you, like, they're like, oh, you like, that was really amazing that they did that, like, you should be very proud. And I was just like, but I didn't do anything, like, I'm still just trying to figure it out, you know, like. And I think it's almost like, it's funny how it can seem uncomfortable to like feel good about yourself in a way that you're like, oh, I'm actually doing okay, and I've sort of found my place. Because I think people expect you to just like beat yourself down and like not feel good about who you are, because if you aren't beating yourself down, then you're just like full of yourself, or it's not real, you know. And so I think that's like, you get such in a mindset where you're like, it's hard to accept a compliment, or it's hard to accept praise, because so many people tell you all, like otherwise, like you're just made to feel bad, or you're constantly measuring yourself against people. So I'm really just trying to like place myself in who I am and feel comfortable, and be able to like understand, you know, to be humble about it though, and understand that I still have so much to learn, especially in social work, especially with Indigenous peoples. And but just to feel confident about like sort of what we've been talking about, just like, it's an embodiment, it's an identity. And if that's true, and if that's real, then like I'll be okay, and I'll do well. And I just have to sort of trust. I don't know, I definitely love like reading tarot, and you know, like just trusting the universe, you know. And like, if I just put out my love laser beams out into the world, the world will take care of me, and you know, everyone around me will be okay. And yeah, it's a little witchy, but
That's a very good philosophy to have.
yeah.
Do you ever get the inkling of imposter syndrome?
What is that? I feel
So
like I know what that is, but I kind of want to just clarify.
yeah, sure. So imposter syndrome is when you feel that you're in a place that you shouldn't be. So lots of people experience this coming out of university when they start getting into jobs, and especially more significant to themselves jobs, where they understand that they're maybe not qualified, because that's something that tends to happen out of university, is you're likely not qualified in your personal perspective of the thing that you're doing, because you don't have experience in it. So you get thrown into this realm of things that you don't understand or don't know as well as you potentially could. And you see a bunch of people around you that do have experience, so they do understand what's going on. And in that sense, you feel a little bit you feel a little bit like an imposter. And I think that's definitely something that happens to lots of people, myself included. I definitely felt like an imposter my last semester of school, because I almost failed out in my first year. And then in my final year, I made the dean's list, taking 6 classes per semester and doing a bunch of volunteering and playing sports. And I remember one of my friends, Bird, Kyle, he was my roommate in the summer, and we were talking about school, and he said to me, yeah, you and I are totally, we're really leading the way for the older guys in academics on the volleyball team. And I was totally taken aback by it. I had no idea what he was talking about, because I still felt like I was nearly failing out, but it turned out that I wasn't. So I always carried that with me a little bit, of the imposter of intelligence.
And you feel like that was when you felt it the most, was in the last semester?
I think it was just always something that I carried since I was a young little gaffer, a kiddo. I remember getting diagnosed with a learning disability when I was young, and my dad made sure that I didn't go on medication, which I thank God every day for him for doing that. But yeah, that was something that I always kind of carried with me. So anytime I'm complimented for anything, I mostly feel like an imposter.
That's kind of what I mean about like people putting pressures on what is considered intelligence and what is valued, right? And I think it creates people who doubt themselves or feel like that's not the right place, or, you know, I think, so you were asking if I felt that at any point?
Well, it sounds like a very emotional and spiritual experience going through, especially going into Indigenous studies and doing research in the realm of
Hmm.
Indigenous populations. That was something that
Yeah.
I did resiliency research, not research, but I did a resiliency class over the summer. And the main two groups that I looked into were Black youth in the United States and then Indigenous populations in Canada. And
Oh,
something
cool.
that I found was there was a lack of research, and I narrowed that down to a mistrust between the, you could call it the colonial way of learning, and bands having a negative experience with the scientific method, and having people
Hmm.
like having people come in from post-secondary institutions and wanting to know everything about the band and just trying to get in right away without really being initiated or anything. And it
Oh,
sounds like
yeah, absolutely.
you've definitely been initiated more than most people would
Hmm.
ever hope to be initiated into something like that.
And I mean, I think that's something that I'm still trying to catch up with.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. It's like okay, like I understand what happened was very significant, and um, but still, that's sort of like I'm just a girl. Like I'm a first year social work student. Like maybe that's where the imposter, where I'm like, am I just faking this? Like, am I just like, like I don't know, like am I kind of just like playing the cards right because I know how to I'm a good with people where it's like, but is this real? I'm like, am I actually learning what I need to learn in social work? Am I learning enough about the actual jargon? Like because a lot of what I do comes like from the heart. Like a lot of it's just sort of like off the dome, like just like and sometimes I'm like I'm proud of somebody that I don't feel like I follow like a sort of like a pedagogy in education that's really standard. Like I definitely lean more towards like being like I work best when what I do comes from the heart. But I think that is what has given me the opportunity with Duana because she sees that in me, and that's a huge part of Indigenous culture. Is that it's not like standard ways of learning and teaching, and it's so dominant, so capitalist and like hierarchical, and it's just like completely different from what some Indigenous cultures how they teach and how they storytell. And I think if you have like I feel like I sort of lean more towards that type of learning that is more traditional to Indigenous culture, and maybe like that's I think what Duana sees in me as a student, and I really want to nurture that and go farther with it. But still, sometimes I'm just like, is this real? What's happening? Like, is this like this is so intense? Like, it's so a lot happening at once, and it's like I have this feeling of like I was saying this to my mom after she offered me the Praxis. I was just like, it was a crazy day. It was like I seriously felt like I was out of body the whole day. I like called my parents and they were so happy. Like it was a huge moment for them too because like Duana like complimented my parents. She was like, "You must have the most incredible family. Like for you to be this woman, like who are your parents?" Like I was like, and telling them that was huge for my mom too, especially who fought for me for my all of like elementary school and high school to like not let teachers make me feel inadequate. For her to like sort of see that I'd finally gotten to this place where a teacher was like, this is amazing in you, that this is how you learn and this is how you connect and are relational with people. And, I remember telling my mom, I was like, I feel like my future, it's like weird. It's weird because I feel like I'm in my future and it's happening like in front of me. It's like evolving in this way that it had never had before. And yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, that was only a few months ago. Like this is still pretty fresh in my brain. And yeah, I feel like I think this is the first time in my life where I'm not really experiencing imposter syndrome. Like I'm actually really like this is who I am, and I'm trying to embody it in all different aspects of my life too. Like yeah, trying to be in control of who I am and my personality, and not being sorry, and not trying to just like being like it's okay that you're who you are and I am who I am. We can still know each other and connect, but like be proud of who you are, and find people who make you feel good about that and surround yourself with them. And yeah, it's quite the tangent. Like, do you ever feel like sometimes when you get into these conversations, you sort of talk yourself into like feeling kind of stoned or something? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're like your brain, you get into these really intense thoughts, and you're like, as you're talking, you're like working out things in your brain. And you're like, oh, I gotta think. I'm like, and you're thinking and processing at the same time. Yeah. Anyway, that's where I'm at.
I had a friend, I posted a highlight of my friend Andre and mine's conversation, and it was about saying no and learning how to say no. to things that you don't want to do. And I posted the highlight and he messaged me after and said, "Did I say that?" And
Oh, really?
I thought it was funny because I tend to black out during these things. I just kind of go along with it, and then after I have to think about what I said and whether it was appropriate or not. But it's always
That's the best, though. Yeah.
yeah, like I
Think
said,
about it too much.
it's really exploring a part of your mind that you don't know much about, because it's likely maybe this is one of the first times you've had a conversation like this where we explore ideas similar to this and just talk all the way through it. So I think it's every conversation is just so different, and I learn a lot from every single person. So I definitely do hit tangents where I'm not sure what I'm talking about, but I tend to try to be on the question side a little bit more, because I definitely like to hear more about what other people think, and if people listen to this consistently, they'll hear my voice enough. So I want them to hear other voices.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. It's really amazing to see you doing it. And like, I feel like it's funny. I can't remember who I was talking. Maybe Hannah Whitehead. We're very similar. We do this all the time. We call them soul talks. We'll like get into these ridiculous conversations where we're like, "Whoa, like, take a break." Like, it's intense. But yeah, I remember when I was doing this, we were just talking about how, like, I mean, we both know you, and I feel like we're both just like, it's totally what Josh should be doing. Like, he's so perfect for it. And, like, I feel very comfortable talking and expressing things that are really intense and like kind of like the inner workings of my psyche, like, but it feels very natural. And, I think it's awesome. I'm really happy for you that you're doing it. And it's, you're like pumping these out too. Holy, I'm like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I have about 2 conversations a week, which isn't too bad. The rest of my time is spent reading and writing, so it's good to talk to humans.
Yeah, and teaching the dogs tricks.
Yes, yeah, the dogs tricks. But thanks a lot. I really appreciate that.
Of course. But yeah, this has been pretty awesome. It's funny, like, I haven't like worked out, like thought about like that early on in playing music in a long time, and sort of like connecting it to social work. That was I took my brain just went on a journey. It was awesome.
You were great. Seriously, you were amazing. I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for coming on. You were very fluid. You're very well spoken. You're very articulate.
Thank you very much.
And incredibly creative. So I'm excited for the things you do in the future. Also, I guess we can talk about this a little bit more after, but it's always something that I like to plug. There's a book by Michael J. Chandler on Indigenous youth suicide. And I think you would, I've talked about it a few times in past episodes, I think with Prim, and then again with Owen. Owen and I talk about drug addiction, and that's going to be coming out next Wednesday. And it's just unbelievable, the stuff that guy finds. He's a UBC professor. He just passed away a couple of years ago, but
what's his name?
Michael J. Chandler.
Okay.
I'll send you the
I'll
PDF.
put it in my notes.
I'll send you a PDF. I have a PDF of his book, but he found that Indigenous youth suicide was primarily governed by the governing structures within the band. So if the band was given more opportunity for self-governance and the ability to control their policing forces more, and also practices such as music and culture, art, language, all of those things led to decreases in youth suicide, to the point where, I think I might have said this at the beginning of this little tangent, but 90% of youth suicide is burdened upon 10% of Indigenous bands. And that number just becomes increasingly small with the more of these governing structures that the Indigenous bands are given power over. So very cool, very interesting stuff. Seems like something that should be common knowledge at this point, but I hope that talking about it will change things up a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the thing, like, especially like there's some momentum a little bit right now, but like it's sad to think that like it's probably going to go away. Like you see people getting active on social media and sharing about it and stuff, and it's like, it's great, and I love seeing people supporting and showing solidarity, but it's like, this is a long fight that Indigenous peoples have been fighting since colonization, and there's been a lot of damage that's been done, and there's so many like intergenerational trauma that is just like terrorizing populations. And it's like, I think I just hope I just hope that, we're in a part of, this sort of like progressional time that it's just going to like start to change and people will start to pay attention more. And, it's almost like, we knew there was kids there. We knew there was, like, was it that much of a surprise, really? There's hundreds of kids missing from these schools' records, and it's like, where do you think they went? I think like people being so shocked and seeing some of the like, government level responses to it, it's just like, I mean, come on, like, we're just going to be ignorant to this and, just, take partial accountability and then just move on with our lives. And I really hope that doesn't happen. I know it will for a lot of people, but that's why, like, learning and education and is the most powerful thing in reading, because like, just, yeah, I mean, obviously, as a white person who benefits from settler colonialism every day, I think the best thing I can do right now is just learn. And that's all that, you're not expected to know what the right thing is to do. If you were to go into an Indigenous community as a worker, a social worker, and know what to do, there's a huge amount of learning that goes first, and it will never stop. You have to just be open to, if Indigenous peoples want to teach you and share their knowledge with you, then, just listening is a huge step. And I think if people understand that, like, sometimes the idea of being an ally, and I think even the word ally is kind of like a little washed with some like colonial people trying to like, be do-gooders. But I think like co-conspirator or like, friends, it can seem intimidating because it's hard to know what the right thing is to say or do when it comes to these situations. But learning is easy, reading is easy, like following Instagram accounts that like share things and, or Indigenous, organizations or news outlets, like just connect with them and learn and be, and that in itself, you'll get closer to like feeling like you can, be part of a healing effort. And I think that that's something that's really easy. And if people just sort of, cared more and wanted to learn, it would be huge. I think that's changing, right? Like curriculum is changing and, the momentum behind it is changing, but that's awesome. I'd love to read that if you want to send it to me. I'm reading a book right now called From the Ash.
All good?
Sorry.
No,
I was like, it was at 5%, and I was like, nah, it'll last a bit.
So the last I heard, you were reading a book called
yeah, From the Ashes.
From the Ashes.
By Jesse. I can't remember, Jesse something. I think it's up in my room. But it's his memoir. I really like reading memoirs about Indigenous peoples. Like I read this one is just like him. Like I'm halfway through, and it's just like lots of like most the chapters are kind of just like little stories from his childhood and growing up, and they kind of intertwine into each other. But it's just like it's super heart wrenching, a lot of it, and tragic. But part of me is like, I need to read this because it's real, and it's real stories and experiences of people that I want to know how to work with and want to know, the realities of where these people come from. So that's a really good one. There's also one called They Called Me Number One, which is a memoir by Bev Sellers, who residential school survivor. And it's really intense. It's a lot of really horrible accounts of stuff at the residential school, and I can't remember where exactly it is, maybe near Williams Lake. But yeah, just like reading this stuff, it's really hard to read, but I mean, it's like if that's what I can do right now, then I'm gonna do it. This is the least I can do. So yeah, love to read that when you recommended.
Yeah, I've found autobiographical and memoir works to be just such an unbelievable complement to any quantitative analysis books that I read. They're getting an on-the-ground perspective from people is very different from looking at numbers. So that's very cool that you're doing that.
Absolutely.
All right, I think this is probably a good place to sign off. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciated that. You were, like I said, you were absolutely great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited to watch it back and probably experience that same like, whoa. I was like watching stuff back and being like, did you even answer that question, Hannah? You just like rambled about something that was coming out of your brain, like. But that makes for the richest conversation.
It does. No, I thought you did. I thought you did great. I thought you answered every question very good, better than I would have answered them. So thanks a lot, Hannah.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. It was nice to chat with you.
Yeah, it was nice to chat with you too.
Okay.